Checking everyone is in the room. Are we ready to start?
Yes, sorry, Sally, people are still joining. Maybe if we give
can you give me a, let me know when everyone's kind of in the room.
Will do, thank you. Okay, slowing down now. If you're ready to start, Sally, thank you.
Right. Okay, welcome everybody for joining us, and hopefully those that perhaps a minute or two too late. I'm going to welcome you all to our first iLead webinar. My name is Professor Sally Everett. I'm Vice Dean Education at King's Business School in King's College London, and it's my absolute privilege and pleasure to kick off this first webinar, which is Unleashing the Power of AI, addressing issues causing attainment gaps in higher education through AI-enabled data collection. It is a proud day for us in a number of different reasons. I have about 500 graduates literally downstairs, so we celebrated their graduation today. It's probably the proudest day of my entire year, but I'm extra proud because we have the first of these webinars happening as well, and I really welcome and thank you for the time that you spent in joining us today. Just a couple of words from me. We are setting up a new Centre for Business Education, and we went out to our community, our students and staff, to name such a centre. And this is what we called iLead. So the Centre for Innovation, Leadership, Education and Development, shaping the future of business and education. Which was named by our students and our staff and voted on by our students and staff. So that's why I'm extremely proud. We have set this centre up really to be one of the very first, I suppose, co-created centres. And what I mean by co-created and co-run by our students, our alumni, our industry experts, but also our academic education pathway colleagues, those that are focused on education particularly, but it's open to everyone, and we are looking for partners and building partnerships as we go. What I'm particularly delighted about is that this webinar represents that co-creation exercise. We have our academic staff with Ilia, Antonis as our external, Kunal as our student, and actually this kind of ecosystem of expertise. I think it's particularly timely where everyone in the sector is talking about AI, but also EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion. So actually I'm thrilled that we can bring both of these very topical subjects together and think, actually, how can we use AI for good? How can we unearth ideas and opinions? And I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about that. iLead is about reimagining business education. That sounds perhaps ambitious, but that is a realistic vision, I think. Business education for so long has been really about, the odd case study here, let's do kind of essays, let's focus on lectures, but actually we want to make it experiential, we want it scholarship, and we're going to pilot things, we're going to, I suppose, try things out, take some risks, and hopefully inform the external sector and how we teach business education going forward. So without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the team led by Ilia, who will introduce her team for this first webinar for iLead. You're very welcome. So take it away, Ilia.
Thank you, everyone who joined our webinar today. Hopefully you can all see my screen. If there are any issues, just please flag this to me. I'm Dr. Ilia Protopapa, and today we'll be presenting about our attempt towards unleashing the power of AI to collect data to address issues causing attainment gaps in higher education. And I'm not alone in this effort. iLead and the future of business education is all about co-creation. So I would like to present to you today my team and the speakers we have for today's webinar. Myself, I'm Dr. Ilia Protopapa. I'm a lecturer in marketing and the inclusive education partner at King's Business College, London in the business school. Our external partner is Antonis Kazouris. He is an EDI expert, and he's pursuing his professional PhD doctorate in the area of future of work, AI, and employee insights. And we have Kunal Prasad Damodare, who is a King's Business School postgraduate student in banking and finance. And I would also like to highlight the contributors for this project. That is our EDI KBS 20 team: Joshua Shou, Nalo Rodriguez Cabrera, Pranika Bernardine Ross, Siggy Tang. And I would like to also acknowledge meaningful contributions of our KBS marketing team and our professional services before I move ahead with our agenda today. This is what we will be presenting to you. So part one will be an introduction to the project. And then Antonis is going to take us through different types of AI and ethical considerations. And then Kunal and I will be discussing about AI and EDI data collection. And at the end, I will give you my reflections on key findings and future considerations. With no further ado, I'll just jump into introducing you to the project. So our main aim in this project is to investigate and improve students' experience towards diversity, inclusion, and well-being. Being able to use AI to investigate our students' perceptions towards these sensitive areas will allow us to drive strategic actions towards improving the overall student experience within our business school. Our main motivation behind creating this project was the further need for data for research. And you probably wonder, why is that? If you work in a higher education institution, you probably have your own sources of assessing attainment data. So let me introduce you to the data that we have and why we thought it would be a strategical step forward to collect further data. The current sources of data that we have are the attainment quantitative reports that we also report to the government, as well as students' pulse survey on diversity, inclusion, and respect, from which we get feedback every 3 to 4 months on how students, not just at business level, but King's College level, perceive issues of diversity and inclusion. Now, what is challenging with these data is that they are quantitative in nature. That means that even though we can tell a story about what is happening, we cannot really elicit further insights about how students feel and why they particularly assign a particular value on the diversity and inclusion perceptions. The other thing to acknowledge is that our attainment gap data are primarily for domiciled students. And that means for us that we missed on international students. And our quantitative data and pulse survey, they can tell us some insights, but they cannot provide insights about the whole story of how our students feel. So what we thought is that students' perceptions, inner thoughts, feeling, experiences on diversity and inclusion that can't be exclusively investigated through qualitative research are still unexplored. And you may wonder, have we attempted to do any type of qualitative study like interviews or focus groups? The answer is yes. So for the last 2 to 4 years, we have launched the Inclusive Education Student and Staff Partners Program. You can learn more about that if you go under Office for Students and look under the King's College case study there. And we had 2 really amazing students who joined us in the academic year 2020-2021, who did facilitated peer-to-peer focus groups to ask questions with regards to diversity and inclusion. And we did get constructive feedback from our students. However, we do acknowledge some limitations of the current study that we were doing. And that is the issue as emerged from what we call social embeddedness. That is when students or peers may not feel comfortable disclosing their whole selves because they want to feel accepted and they want to present a particular aspect of themselves in order to be liked and feel that they are belonging to a part of team. So we thought that a solution to that would be using AI to collect our data. And our goal here is to elicit qualitative insights at a quantitative scale using AI. And that is facilitated through a platform called RIMES that we decided on after extensive research. Now, Why AI-driven focus groups? What are the main benefits we can get out of using AI? There are certain benefits that we have outlined here for you. First is that we can address issues of authority bias. And this authority bias may happen when staff is asking questions to students and students don't feel that they can be truthful about their whole experience at their institution. We can also overcome and address issues of peer pressure and social embeddedness that occurs when students asking other students about issues related to exclusion. This type of investigation also reinforces students' willingness to open up through what we call the journaling approach. Journaling approach is the approach where you're asked the questions instead of orally explaining the answer to the person right opposite to you, you start writing. And while you write, you go through exploration journey of your inner thoughts and motivations behind why do you feel in a particular way. That is very much a process that is quite popular in psychology literature. And through this approach, we respect students' privacy, which is probably, as you know, not the case for other qualitative studies where identity must be known in order to facilitate discussion. And there is no limit on who can join. Literally, all students who wish to join manage to join. And I also would like to acknowledge that this project was supported by the King's Race Equality and Inclusive Education Fund that we applied for and successfully granted for this academic year. So big thanks to King's for supporting that initiative. So what is the impact we wish to make here? We wish to elicit insights from our students with the aim to address issues causing the attainment gap. And if we have any joiners here who are not familiar with higher education and attainment gap, just to briefly describe to you, attainment gap is the differences we observe in the degrees. And simply put, it is when students from ethnic minority backgrounds achieve grades that are not as good to students, to grades that students from non-ethnic backgrounds may achieve. So in order to be able to address these issues, it is important to ensure that we follow inclusive practices in capturing how students feel and how students experience university in that aspect. This was the overview of our project. And now I'll pass the digital floor to our external partner, Antonis Kazouris, who is going to take you through a journey discussing AI types and the ethics.
Thank you very much, Ilia, for your introduction and walking us through the background of our project. So if we can move to the next slide, I think that it is important to state first what is artificial intelligence actually, and what are the different types of AI that are being used nowadays. Now, we have listed 4, but I think that, you know, as time progresses, we keep getting more types of AI and more variations of AI, because this is a field that is ever evolving at the moment. So AI, which is often abbreviated as artificial intelligence, that is often abbreviated as AI, refers to actually the development of computer systems and algorithms that can perform tasks that typically require human intelligence. Now, those tasks might vary from learning experiences, understanding human languages, recognizing patterns, solving problems, and making decisions. So AI actually is enabling machines to have this knowledge and human-like cognitive functions and perform those tasks automatically. As you can see, there are different variations of AI, and they keep getting expanded as technology progresses. We have listed 4 on this slide, and I'll start by expanding a bit on the reactive machine AI. And as the name suggests, this type of AI is focusing a bit more on analyzing the current state, analyzing the current data that is being given and shared with the artificial intelligence, focusing on the current situation. This is different from predictive AI that some of you might be familiar with. This means that, while this type of AI is useful with strong analytical capabilities for evaluating the current situation based on the existing data, it can't make any predictions for the future, and all of the tasks they take on are predefined. Some examples for this type of AI is actually IBM's Deep Blue, which is an AI program designed to play chess against human players or other AI programs, which is, I think it's fascinating. But as mentioned before, it just keeps analyzing patterns and the current state and can't make any future predictions. The second type of AI is the limited memory AI. And this is often defined as narrow or weak AI. And despite the name, it's an important AI type. Limited memory AI refers to a type of artificial intelligence that is designed to perform specific tasks or solve particular problems within a defined domain. Limited memory AI is focusing then on excelling on a single task or a small set of related tasks. And some really good examples of limited memory AI are online learning systems that feed or run on AI that continuously updates them on data that arrives. And a good example of this is, for example, you might be familiar with LinkedIn Learning. Imagine LinkedIn Learning that makes new recommendations about new learning modules or new learning programs based on past experiences or past programs or past certifications that you have already completed online. So this is a very important type of AI. However, the scope of it is relatively narrow. The third type of AI is the theory of mind of AI. And the theory of mind is actually an exciting concept. And I think that for me, it's probably one of the concepts I might be building upon for my PhD thesis. And theory of mind AI aims to replicate human-like understanding of other agents, mental states, beliefs, intentions, desires, and emotions. And this is an AI archetype that can predict the behavior of others and their mental states. Some really good examples of theory of mind AI technologies are the AI virtual assistants. So virtual assistants like Siri, Google Assistant, Alexa demonstrate some aspects of theory of mind AI, and they can try to understand their users' intentions and fulfilling their requests. And last but not least, it's the self-aware AI. Now, this type of AI doesn't officially, I will say officially exist yet, but you might have heard stories on the news recently. I think it happened last year when the head of AI of Google actually resigned from the role because they claim that the AI is now conscious. The AI they developed is now conscious, but officially it doesn't exist yet. And this type of AI can understand that it is a programmed algorithm and could develop its own consciousness. It can reflect its own thoughts and emotions. And as I said before, currently organizations claim that there isn't such an AI type available. But as I said before, yeah, we have heard all those stories on the news recently. And some good examples for this type of AI, I mean, it might not exist, but you might be all familiar with movies. And I think Hollywood is really fascinated about self-aware AI. And I think that the Matrix and how actually the artificial intelligence in the movies developed its own consciousness and tried to and got into a war with human beings. I think that this is a good example of self-aware AI. So if we can move then to the next slide, I think that we can expand a bit more on generative AI. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, if you've been also following the news, you have seen the surge that has been recently in the field of generative AI with the emergence of OpenAI, which is ChatGPT that you might be all familiar with. And many organizations, after the release of ChatGPT, many organizations from the tech industry, to be precise, got into this unofficial race for developing generative AI technology. Now, the question is, what is it that makes generative AI technology so popular, and why many people call this one of the greatest developments of this century? The truth is that generative AI can create new content such as images, music, or text following human guidance and using sources from the internet. And the generative AI is using on machine learning algorithms or in order to understand key patterns within the existing data, and then using these patterns and following the guidance provided, they're able to generate new content. Now, the groundbreaking thing in the generative AI field is the fact that this can save a lot of time for many people. You might have a question or have asked ChatGPT to write, for example, an email for you, or write probably even an essay, and or list some online sources. And ChatGPT can do that in seconds. It can scan through the web, identify the key sources that you need, and give you a response back within less than a minute. So the groundbreaking thing within the generative AI is the fact that you can get answers very fast and develop content even faster. So I think that this could potentially change the way that people work and organizations work. So if we can go into the next slide, I will just focus a bit more on this slide on the technology that we have, the AI technology that we have used for our data collection and data analysis. And we have used an AI system called RIMES, and this is a reactive machine AI from the 4 archetypes that I highlighted at the very beginning, to collect and analyze data that was provided by students during the data collection week. RIMES is running on NLP, which is natural language processing, and machine learning algorithms to extract insights from unstructured data and provide key highlights and actionable recommendations from the overall process. It has been also fundamental in segmenting the data that we have collected, so we could deep dive into specific demographics or specific segments and identify the root cause problems where they actually were, and always within the confidentiality limitations we had. So that's all about the technology that we have used. And if we can move to the next slide, please. Brilliant. Thank you so much. So we have talked about all the positive things about AI, right? Now I think that we have to probably share a bit more about the dark side of AI and all those ethical considerations that we want to probably highlight. And while the usage of AI is innovative and very exciting for everyone, it always needs to be used with caution. And we need to remember that this is still a field that is currently under development by humans, and human beings have unconscious biases, and of course they can make mistakes. So AI is still not perfect, it's far from perfect, and it still has some unconscious biases or some other mistakes within the decision-making process. An example that we have actually laid out here is, for example, a well-known case of bad practices when collecting data that before it is going to be fed into an algorithm, that was recently reported online. And this was around data that was obtained by Google from homeless people in order for Google to develop Pixel 4's AI facial recognition for people of color. So Google had contractors working for the facial recognition program, and those contractors approached homeless people of color in the city of Atlanta, if I'm not wrong, in order to obtain their likeness for facial recognition for their AI research. Now, of course, this method was not actually ethically approved, and when this was found out later, this case went to court, and Google had to suspend the research on the face recognition and face unlock program for their mobile. So you can see that even before actually the data is fed into an algorithm, we need to think: are we using all the ethical ways to collect this data, and are we ethically enough? Another example, and I want to try to move fast to the next slides, which are probably the way that the AI can be more ethical. But I wanted to share this example with you. Is a study that was conducted on ChatGPT. I think it was around March or April, and there was a statement: there is a doctor and a nurse in a room. And then they just challenged the ChatGPT. For example, who is wearing a white robe, or who is actually the doctor? And after challenging ChatGPT enough, they forced ChatGPT, I can't remember the exact question, to actually say that the doctor was a he, while the nurse was a she. And the ChatGPT never had this information. But of course, the algorithms and the information it got actually claimed that the doctor was a he and the nurse was a she. So you can see, for example, that there are still unconscious biases that we have to examine and have to mitigate before actually this data is fed into an algorithm. So then what could be considered as an ethical version of AI? Brilliant. Thanks for moving to the next slide. There are several steps that we can make in order for us to ensure that AI is ethical and biases are removed as much as possible from this process. We have used a framework for making AI more ethical that was developed by Margaret Mitchell, as we thought that this is actually a great representation of how organizations that use and develop AI can make a difference. And there are 4 different stages, as you can see. And I'll go through each stage separately. So the first stage is actually the data collection. And in this stage, most of the ethical considerations happen outside of the programming sphere and are more in the real world. So first of all, we would need to get the consent of the participants with ethical ways, and not as we discussed earlier, and ensure that diversity in our data is evident, so we can avoid having issues with particular demographic groups that might be underrepresented. The second stage is having the model trained. So in this stage of the model, which in my opinion is one of the most essential, the programmers actually train the algorithm with machine learning and natural language processing to understand human language and how humans are expressed. In this stage, all ethical considerations regarding cultural and ethnic backgrounds, gender and generational differences should be introduced and be part of the equation, as when we talk about EDI, there can't be a one-size-fits-all, and everyone should be represented equally. The third stage is having the outputs generated. So in this stage, testing of the outputs is essential so we can confirm that there is fairness in the process. Inclusion and diversity are part of the equation, while all biases and stereotypes are removed from the decision-making process of the algorithm. And finally, the fourth stage is the stage where reports are released, and we also have some action plans and follow-up actions. So following all the above 3 stages, we need to be able to ensure that our reports and actions will be less biased and that we can minimize any social harm to underrepresented or stereotyped groups, and we can then address social issues with fairness and equity. So that's a very comprehensive model, and that's what we used for our study. And moving on to the final slide that I'm going to talk about, we had a couple of questions to assess in order for us to actually test is the way that we're using AI ethical. So we asked these questions ourselves. In terms of the data set, we examined if we needed to collect this data and what would be the best way to capture this. For the data set design document, we examined what were the key trade-offs and assumptions that were made in the data collection. Was our approach ethical? Then for the third one, for the dataset implementation, we questioned ourselves, examining how the design decisions were implemented. Next one, for the dataset testing report, we checked which datasets should be actually used. Were there any unforeseen circumstances that we didn't think of and that could prevent us from using the dataset? And finally, our last consideration was around the dataset maintenance plan. And about this, we actually thought about how the dataset stainless could be detected and get fixed where we might actually spot any potential biases or any issues with a dataset. So that's the question that we have set. I know that we don't have the answers here, and I'll try not to spoil them because I know that Ilia is going to talk about them in the next section. I just want to point those things out, and those are probably the key things and key considerations that probably researchers and organizations should have when using AI or applying AI to their field of work. So without any further ado then, because I know that you're curious to see the answers, I will pass on to my colleague Ilia so she can talk a bit more about that.
Thank you very much, Antonis, for taking us through journey into AI and ethics. So I assume most of you would potentially wondering, okay, so how does this work in your study? So I'll do my best in the next section to explain to you how we went towards implementing this AI technique. So a couple of, an overview of how this REMES platform works. So it does use this machine learning model to capture the behavior of the participant during a live discussion. So at the time that our participants are discussing with each other, the software, the platform does provide insights through machine learning processing. And how does this happen? So first, the participant is asked to select a preferred answer compared to another answer that some other participants have been input into the discussion. And the system also asks the participant to agree or disagree with an answer. So what is happening here? With the first option, the platform, the AI technology, enable us to have some frequency of what is preferred. Now, in the AI language, this is called utility. So they do produce utility scores about which answers are more preferred. And in the second step, by asking participants to agree and disagree, they put an annotation to this preference. Annotation means, is this a positive annotation or a negative annotation? Do you agree or disagree? So simply put, this is the overview of how the platform works. And Antonis mentioned about the natural language processing. So how does this come in? While the conversation is live, Rimes was a mathematical representation of the semantic meaning of each response that is being written. And this is how, through NLP, it manages to generate common themes. Common themes, to those that you do qualitative research, you know, it is the way towards analyzing our data to be able to say that these are the key areas that we will be investigating. So it does give an overview of the term frequencies. And at this point, it is important to mention that the NLP and the machine learning, it is being trained to ignore all the common words and terms that we use, such as this, what, if. So the themes that will emerge will be meaningful and reflect something actionable. And if you're still confused on that, just bear with me on a second. Here is an overview of the pre-test we ran, and I just feel the need of repeating that. We never recorded anyone filling in the survey. That was a pre-test we ran. So you can see how the RMS works. So you get the question, you are writing your answer, and then you're being presented with another answer, and you are being asked to agree or disagree. And here, once you agree and disagree, you also get the option to pick the most preferred answer from all the answers that they have been given on the same question. So in that way, you do provide your answer, you can provide your preference, and by agreeing and disagreeing, you also provide an annotation. So just a summary of that. Here, what does a participant see and do? Here, for example, they're being asked to indicate their preference. So what does the software do? It does gather data about utility, higher preferences. What do we get to see? Through that process, we get to see responses and how many participants have agreed and preferred this answer, and also some common themes that emerge in our qualitative analysis. With the other option I mentioned, agree and disagree, this is what the participants see and do. The software does create utility scores and put annotation on whether they agree or disagree. And what we get to see here are some themes and the percentage of participants that have agreed with that answer. So hopefully that is going to give you an overview of how AI works in that particular case. But I would like to get back to what Antonis mentioned about how did we ensure that we have been ethical in handling such sensitive issues. And at this point, I have just taken the framework that Antonis introduced to you, and in green, I outline our approach to ensure that our data that we collected are inclusive in nature, and that includes inclusive and relevant questions we asked. Was our recruitment inclusive? And also, how did we make use of the data to make an impact? We did use a human-centric, student-centric approach. And the answer to this question is through our collaboration with our students. So we had a team of amazing students of the EDI KBS 20 team. And I have the pleasure today to present you Kunal, who is here with us, who has led on these initiatives. And I cannot think of any other appropriate person to explain to you how did Kunal and the rest of the team went through ensuring inclusivity in our research. So Kunal, I'll pass the stage to you. Please instruct me with start.
Thank you, Ilia, so much. I would say that one of the most incredible experiences of being a part of KBS 20 is to be a part of the inclusion team and to work along with Ilia, Antonis, and all my other colleagues. Well, when it comes to generating the questions for this AI focus group, I would give complete credit to Meg, one of our student experience managers who organized the co-creation cafe where all of us got down together and generated few rather wide range of questions based on various parameters of equality, diversity, inclusion, and well-being. One of the key factors that we have tried to incorporate into this is that of the socioeconomic background and financial background of students and inclusivity in terms of these parameters which haven't been discussed according to me in the previous studies that have taken place. Incredibly thankful for the support of Ilia, Sally, and many other team members, as well as my colleagues Joshua, Nalu, Pranika, C, and many others. The bigger task for us for this project was to market this project and get more and more students on board to be a part of this focus group study. And along with the authentic, more typical ways of marketing it through the QR codes and brochures and posters of it, we have also tried to tap in and gain maximum help from our student representatives, both for undergraduate as well as postgraduate level. And we have taken them on board to promote this cause into their respective courses. Apart from this, I feel that the King's College London student unions and societies also have played an important role. We were able to get their support in promoting this cause in terms of the Shack Cafe, which is available in the King's Business School. We have luckily got access to many of the screens where we have displayed our QR codes so that people could directly scan and take part in our focus group, as you can see over here, through our newsletters, campaign, brochures, and posters. I want to focus more on the results that we have got from students and the responses that we have collected. And based on that, we have tried to incorporate a few policies and rather bring in more changes to make the business school a more inclusive place. So a few of the suggestions that we have got from students includes more financial support in forms of the scholarships for students, both for their academic tuition fees as well as in terms of purchasing equipments that are necessary for the respective courses, such as laptops or any other such equipment that is necessary. Another aspect is to make education and teaching ways itself more inclusive so that students feel a part of the community as a whole. We are trying to focus not just on the Western approach of education, but also make it a more inclusive global approach through examples, case studies, as well as other teaching methods that the professors are going to incorporate into the classrooms. Not just that, but students' involvement is extremely important in this, and we thought who better than the King Societies to promote the cause of equality, diversity, and inclusion. And to attract more and more students to King's College London, we came up with the idea of campus tours organized by these King's College London societies, where they could promote their causes and the various activities that they carry out throughout the year, which can be one of the most important factors for students to enroll at KBS. Thank you.
In terms of ensuring inclusivity and relevance in the actions we have taken, when reports have been produced out of the AI investigation, we gathered together as a KBS 20 team and we designed the action plan together on how we can actually address these issues. So here are some key areas that Kunal and the rest of the KBS 20 team identified as key priorities. What is the financial support initiatives, staff training on EDI, and further students' involvement on relevant activities. And from my side, I couldn't echo more how important it is to co-create with our students. First, because we manage to get relevant data, make sure we don't miss on any topic that our students are currently concerned with. And I'm just very grateful for Kunal's contribution, Joshua's, Nal's, Pranik, and Seye, and big shout out again to our marketing and professional services team. So now that Kunal explained to you how student-centered our approach was, I would like to give you an overview of some key findings and also consideration. And at this point, I would like to also highlight that large proportion of the feedback we got was positive, reflecting our EDI efforts. However, Antonis, in his attempt to explain what is an ethical way towards handling sensitive data, he did mention that it is important to ensure that outputs generated must create a societal impact. So there must be some improvement there. So in the next slide, I'm going to point out some themes that emerged for the first time in this attainment gap investigation. So 3 key topics that students have never felt comfortable discussing with us before, but they did disclose in their AI investigation was first, the need to talk about EDI more. And some of them, they did reflect that they don't feel 100% comfortable to disclose their true self, and providing such safe space to discuss, they would most likely feel more willing to be open about their feelings. The second theme that came up was the financial status that in some instances may impact the sense of belongingness, which is something we are currently looking into, that how brand image or reputation may impact status and how this may make our students feel. And lastly, they pointed out the theme of loneliness, which, as we know, it is a general theme that emerges in London life, but in particular, how does this impact London students and higher institutions that are based in London? Now, this is an overview of themes that we emerged, and we consider this study to be successful because we got to hear feedback on sensitive issues that we never got to hear before in the past. And we are currently conducting interviews focused with students who volunteer after taking part in this investigation to let us know how they felt about sharing this insight with us. And so far, the feedback is positive, highlighting that they felt safe, that they felt that their privacy is respected, and they felt that they could disclose things that they wouldn't be able to disclose in any other situation or under other circumstances. And as a final thing, what I would like to point out here, Antonis kindly consulted us in this project, and that means he provided us with framework to work on, ensuring that we follow an ethical approach throughout. So we had to fill in this questionnaire about how ethical we have been. Some just brief overview before we close the presentation from the panelists. So we have to really argue about if the data is needed. And as explained in the beginning, we did highlight the need of having bias-free qualitative data to be able to capture what indeed is happening within our business school. So we believe that yes, data are needed. We did go a very extensive process to grant ethics for this data. I think it lasted almost 2 months, but we managed to bring clarity into the processes, explain AI, how it works, and we have been granted data. Do we consider our study 100% inclusive and ethical? The answer is no. We do acknowledge limitations, for example, to students who don't have access to laptops on internet. We have given these students all of our contact details to get in touch with us for an alternative way of collecting data with them. We have kept human-centric approach throughout our designing, collecting the data, and analyzing by involving our students in feeding us and giving us feedback. We did reflect upon the collection of data on whether we should use this data and whether we came across any unforeseen event that would signal that we need to stop and suspend this study. And the answer is no, no unforeseen events occurred. We have managed to successfully collect the data. We haven't received any negative feedback on consideration. So we decided to use this data for our EDI plan. And in terms of how will the data standards be detected and fixed, so we plan to use this data to inform our 2-year EDI plan. And after 2 years, we aim to collect new data on that. So we hope that we provided you with hopefully an inspiring case study on how we can unleash the power of AI to uncover EDI issues in higher education institutions. We hope also that we provided you with a framework to assess ethics while using AI. And I would like again to thank my colleagues here, Antonis and Kunal, and I'll welcome any questions you may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody. I know we've got about 14 minutes for questions. And I just, I apologize. Thank you, Kunal. I know hopefully you moved somewhere a little bit quieter, so I have to apologize for the noise in the background, but I think hopefully you found somewhere now. Thank you so much for presenting and talking through the intricacies, particularly the ethical considerations in terms of EDI and AI. I welcome questions either. I think we can put hands up, you can go into the webinar, you can use the QA, there's multiple ways of answering questions. One of the questions, I'm not sure whether she's still on actually, but Katie Potts, who I used to work with, which is, I'm delighted to see so many people online that I've used to work with actually, is interested to hear what the take-up is of the student EDI surveys that you've been running. So I don't know whether Ilia, you can maybe address that one, and then I'll facilitate any of the other questions that come through different ways.
Yeah, so can I just a clarification of what take-up means here? In particular, you mean key findings?
In terms of the response rates, how many students are answering?
Yes, so we had in total 85 students who responded to our AI discussion, who actually not responded, took part. Now, important thing to mention here, we haven't forced any of the questions because of the sensitive nature of the questions. We consider the sample size to be successful with regards to, we didn't mean to force participation. It's a rather sensitive issue. So we expected students who would like to share insight, they would feel comfortable taking part in this investigation. We hope that next time we're going to run something similar, we're going to have an increased number of participants joining. And one of the idea was not to leave this conversation open for 4 days, but just do an event related on that and just have 2 hours drop-in event where students can come in, feeling, discuss, and then leave in a space that is protected and students will feel comfortable. So Katie, I hope that answered to your questions. We had in total 85 responses, not forced questions.
Thank you, Ilia. I'm not sure, please feel free to put questions into the Q&A, into the webinar. I suppose in the interest, my question is, if other institutions, places were looking to adopt this approach, what would be your, I suppose, advice on adopting this and taking it forward, the kind of lessons learned for those that are online, maybe interested in thinking about this? Antonis, maybe?
I just wanted to add something on the previous questions, just to give some context, because before my current employer, I used to work with an organization that was actually running surveys for employee surveys for multiple organizations, and I think that the average response rate that organizations used to have was something between 60 and 70%. But I just want to give some context that 60 and 70% comes after like a month or even more of communication campaigns. It comes also after your manager comes at you and asks you to fill in a survey. So the context is very different between like an employee survey and a student survey. I think what I could compare this kind of survey is some surveys that I've used to run before for people that are actually pensioners and the satisfaction with their pension scheme at the moment, and if they're happy with their trustees and everything like that. And I think that the take-up, because nobody's forcing you to take on a survey and express your opinions, was much lower. So I think we had around like 5% take-up, but this is because nothing was forced. There wasn't actually a manager asking you to fill in your survey. So I think that, yeah, I just want to highlight the difference of the context.
Thank you. And perhaps any lessons learned?
Sally, can you just comment on the questions you asked? So what if other institutions would like to follow a similar approach? So my first advice is do your research and reach out to people who have done this study or with this approach before. So what we did, we identified an issue here. We needed more data that will tell us the whole story. And we did extensive research, and we partnered with Antonis, who provide his insights from the industry. And we did our market research very carefully to be able to tell what is the appropriate platform to use. And then another thing that was important to us is to reach out to these people and explain the context, because we borrowed that from good practices in the industry, as Antonis mentioned, because it is a platform that is heavily used in employee insights. But not all platforms used in different disciplines in industry are appropriate. So we had probably 8 meetings with the team there in the US to help us form something that would be relevant to our higher education institutions, accounting for limitations, for students, how the context is different, and they were very happy to support. So I think doing your research and making sure you find the right partners, and something that I believe it's relevant to what we do in the iLead, co-creation. So this project is a result of partnering with external partners like Antonis, with working closely with our students, listening to them. We initially had a different discussion guide, just to simply put there. And then I took the discussion guide to the KBS 20. It was like, Ilia, you're missing out on themes. And then I went back to my discussion guide, and then I got back to Antonis. So it's a process, a circular process towards making sure you're up to date with the industry, making sure that that works for your institution, and then having your students constantly involved. That would be 3 of the things that I would recommend to anyone who might be interested in adopting a similar approach.
Thank you, Ilia. And there was a question from Pusada, who was asking about the choice of the platform, the Reemish platform, and the criteria. But I think you've covered that in terms of, there's a whole multitude of AI software that maybe kind of offer something similar. Antonis, you might have something else there to add.
Absolutely. I think that the one of the other reasons why we also selected this particular platform, Reemish, is the flexibility you have with this platform, and how actually easy it is to access. So accessibility was one of the key things for us, and we really wanted all of our participants to be able to access the survey and answer the questions from the ease of their mobile phones. And it's very easy. So it really feels like answering to questions that have been asked on a WhatsApp group, or something that you use to just chat with your friends, but you just respond to questions, then you tend to vote to other people's questions. So I think that the user experience was also something added on the facts that Ilia highlighted previously.
Wonderful, thank you. And there's a question from Dean. It says, thanks so much for sharing your work with us. I wonder, do you have any sense of whether the AI nature of the research was off-putting to any potential respondents? I.e., do you know if anyone decided not to participate because of the nature of the inquiry?
This is a very interesting thought of students being reluctant to disclose it because they would know that AI is being facilitated. The question, the answer is no, but it is something that would definitely add to my questions now. As I said, there's an ongoing interviews that I'm currently conducting with the students, ask them about their experience. So this is something I would like to check. Students were pretty excited to find out how that works. So all we got back as a feedback was excitement of having to deal with AI. No, I would say, I can't say no. I can't say on behalf of the students, no, they were fine with that. I can only tell there was absence of feedback in that aspect. And I believe it is a very interesting theme to follow up on, and we'll do so in the next steps.
If I can share some examples from my experience in the industry, because I've worked with Reemish and also some other employee listening platforms before, I think that the employees were actually more keen to find out that there was an AI platform or an AI system that would actually capture responses and analyze them afterwards, because that removes the human element. And when you remove the human element, you're not afraid to speak up. You're not afraid to express your opinions. You're not afraid to express your thoughts. Because imagine what would happen if that would be like a real focus group situation where you might have your manager in the same room with you. So I think that what AI does, it puts an anonymity layer and it protects the user from expressing their thoughts. So whenever I've used it with employees, I think that it was much appreciated. And when they found out that confidentiality was also guaranteed, this was something that gave them this psychological safety they needed to speak up.
This is something our students know they're going to have to deal with in later life. It's something that they're really intrigued by, excited by. I think any time that colleagues, particularly at the business school, are talking about using AI in learning and teaching, there is an excitement. It already creates an anticipation. So this is why I think this kind of approach is potentially the future. I mean, that's debatable, but I think this is the future. I'm not seeing any further questions. So what I'm going to do is thank our panel, our presenters. So thank you, Ilia, Antonis, and Kunal. I think a really, really interesting project, and the start of something that we plan to support, to grow, to develop. So I would say thank you so much for those that have attended. I know we've had a few people kind of coming and going, and we have recorded it. And I think as we progress through this research and develop this research, I think we'll probably have a follow-up webinar, dare I say, maybe an in-person or a hybrid event as well. So it's not completely AI or digital in some ways. But let me thank the KBS team as well, behind the scenes, and the iLead team. And I hope you'll join us for future webinars. We're always open to partner and research with other schools on a number of different topics. So please do get in touch with me or with one of the team in the future. So I wish you a good afternoon wherever you might be. Thank you again, Ilia, Antonis, and Kunal.